I'm somebody who's very open with my story, and I know that not everybody can be this open about kind of what they go through, especially with like mental hospitals and issues about suicide. But I just want people to know that I'm somebody who has gone through these things, and if you are going through this hard place, if you are going through a very, very rough time in your life, there are people out there who are willing to help, and I'm definitely one of them. So
Yeah.
whoever you are, if you're watching this and something I said struck a chord with you, or you just want to reach out, or just want to talk about life or school or whatever, do reach out with any of my social media.
Yeah, so what did you do to try to
What do you
kill
mean, like, what
yourself?
did I do?
Like, what did you do to try to kill yourself?
Oh, no, definitely. So, like, what kind of ended me up in the hospital?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to overdose on painkillers.
So what was it like the seconds leading up to the last thing you remember? Like, you overdosed on, you said painkillers
Yeah,
earlier, right?
painkillers. Uh-huh.
Once you took them, did you regret it? No.
Not really at all, to be honest, because when you feel like you're between a hard place and a big rock in your life, at that point, death just feels like an escape, and while I did make that choice,
You
kind
just
of
don't
almost
think
on
twice
impulse
about it.
decision,
It's just like,
it was what I wanted.
it was just what I'm supposed to do now.
Yeah, it's definitely built up a lot of character of who I am today after
Right.
going through the mental hospital.
But it's very, very lucky that it worked out. Because
I am incredibly lucky.
It's so close that it could not have. So you were 5150, and then you were transferred to 5250. So
Yes.
what happened?
I mean, essentially, long story short, I had a breakdown in the mental hospital. Obviously, as somebody who suffers from depression and anxiety, breakdowns are not unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, the doctors definitely realized. And if you just want to ask about the thought process behind what caused the breakdown for me, obviously back in high school, I was somebody who really liked to uphold myself as someone who's really happy. I really enjoyed helping other people, and obviously I kept up good grades, kept up good positions in school. And the stereotype behind those who are depressed is that we're very sad. We don't do well in school. We're very lonely. And, I was obviously the opposite of a lot of those. And so I guess for students in my high school to have found out that this was a part of my experience, that this was a part of who I was,
It messes up your image.
definitely messes up the image that I was keeping up by that point.
And it's like you can't go back.
It's not just that like you can't go back. It literally forces you into a corner, and like the only place you can go is out. Is kind of the way I think about it. And essentially, when I went back to school, definitely I lost a lot of friends. A lot of people changed their perception of me. I was told by a lot of people like, "Hey Emily, I used to respect you until you try to kill yourself." I was told a lot of stupid
Wow,
stuff
that's
like that.
fucking disrespectful.
It is disrespectful,
Holy shit.
No, but it was like literally said to my face. It was messaged to me, said behind my back, a lot of stuff like that. Things like, "Oh, she does so well in school. Like she must be making herself depressed." Things like that. Like, you build a tough skin after you go through that kind of stuff. And so instead of being the person who I used to be, who I really cared a lot about what others thought of me, I kind of had to be forced in a place where I just could not care anymore what people
You just
thought
don't
of
give a
me.
shit.
You wouldn't have functioned if you cared what people thought of you
You
after they said
have
this
to.
kind
You
of
have
thing.
to stop caring. It's too late,
Yeah,
It already
like,
happened.
If I didn't, like, I'm sure that would have taken more of a strain on my mental
Yeah.
health. But coming out of the hospital, having learned how to start healing, like, these things just didn't matter to me anymore.
Yeah.
I just realized these weren't what was important for me in life. These weren't what I should be living for. These weren't what I should be killing myself over anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was just kind of experience going back
Yeah.
to school and with the 5250.
So when you had your breakdown in the hospital that switched you to 5250, what does that look like? What does a breakdown look like? What does it feel like?
I mean, once again, I don't think my narrative of a breakdown is a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
Because once again, it really depends from individual to individual. Like, I know myself, I sometimes have breakdowns in which you probably couldn't tell I was having a breakdown. Like, once again, it varies from person to person, so I don't want to.
No,
I don't
I'm
want
just
to
asking
say
about what it felt like for you. But
I mean, for me, like when I was at the hospital, my breakdown was like, it was a very visible breakdown. Not all breakdowns are visible, but that one I had was very visible.
People
in a
could
sense
just
where,
look at you and see you're out
like,
of it.
Because I started to cry. I just started to. I just shaking. I was crying by myself again. It was like what I had been on my very first day. It was like where I wasn't very healthy. I know that I myself have breakdowns where visually you couldn't tell in me. Like, you couldn't tell. I wasn't having any visible symptoms, but the one that made me 5250, obviously, for
You could
physical
tell.
symptoms to have manifested, that meant it was a pretty serious breakdown.
Right.
And like, once again, it just felt like my world was falling apart, everything I had built up for. Because I was there because of school pressure. I was there because of academic, career, societal pressure around me. And it's also an unknown about the unknown, because when I was in the mental hospital, if I was back in school, I could see the consequences that people finding out about me was playing out. But the thing
you
was,
didn't know how bad it was back at home.
yeah, that's the thing, because I didn't know what people were saying about me. I could only hear it through like third-party accounts. And so I didn't know what people were saying about me. I didn't know if this like changed the way people saw me. I didn't know if this was gonna affect like the leadership positions I had. I didn't know if this was gonna affect my schoolwork, which it did. But like I didn't know any of this being in the hospital where I was isolated.
You just imagine the worst case scenario, huh?
Yeah, essentially, you just imagine the worst case scenario. Like all these different things are playing through my head, and like I can't just. At that point, I was very pessimistic, and I couldn't help.
Kind of paranoia too about like, oh, everyone's watching you, everyone's looking at you now.
Yeah, and it's like everybody's looking at me, but I don't know what they're looking at because I'm not there.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So what was the recovery process like? So at what point did you decide that, hey, I'm okay?
So I don't think that's ever like a conscious decision that you make in your head, like, wow, I'm doing okay now. That'd be great if you could, I mean, but like obviously not.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm not even sure myself, because it's the doctor who chooses to discharge patients. And I think he started to notice that I had taken in very important lessons about, I guess, myself, and accepting the fact that I could give myself compassion, if that makes sense. Because previously I never really allowed myself to, I didn't allow myself to feel bad for myself, but I always felt like I didn't deserve to feel the sadness that I deserved.
You're just not allowed to be depressed.
Yeah, essentially, because that's kind of the society I grew up in. That's kind of the community I was in, where mental health was a conversation, and I felt like I was the only person going through what I was going through. But having heard so many stories from other individuals, having been able to talk openly with other individuals who were going through the same thing, not only made me feel like I wasn't going through this alone, but it made me feel like, you know, like it's completely acceptable to feel how I feel. When
and you kind of need to just let yourself be sad for a sec. You got to just have your ugly cry. That's what a therapist. I had another video where I talked to a therapist, and she said, yeah, you just need to have an ugly cry and just rant and let it out.
You do need to let it out. Like, you can't keep it boiling inside. And I think that's what led me to the mental hospital, that I had been keeping
grief,
it all.
unfelt stress, you know? So for someone who's possibly at one of those breaking points that you were at, that might be watching this, do you have anything that you think you wish you knew? Or
I mean, it's so much easier now, looking in retrospect, for me to tell like past me what I should have been doing.
But there was no way for you to know, huh?
There was no way for me to know, and to be honest, like people around me were telling me what I needed to do, but a part of the the biggest part of the recovery process is accepting, acknowledging, and being self-aware that you are going through something hard, and allowing yourself to feel that and accept that. That's the first step, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then once you're able to genuinely achieve that step, I think that's when you're able to start healing. That's when you're able to start realizing, or you're able to start having those thoughts with yourself of, do I need help, or is this something I can manage? And if I do need help, what does that help look like for me? And like that's when you can start exploring your options. But really the first step is accepting yourself and accepting that you are going through something hard. Because I know a lot of the times, for a lot of adolescents,
you ignore it.
You ignore it, or you feel like, oh, like I'm probably just going through a phase. Like that's such a common phase.
It's a phase.
Yeah,
it's
like
the ups and downs of life. It's the ebb and flow, right? You say like, oh, this is just a thing, you'll get through it, but no.
But it's not something you could just dismiss, you know? And trying to dismiss it only makes it that much worse. So if I could tell like past me something, it would be just that, like, hey, like what you're going through is legitimate and what you're going through is real. And I just hope that if there are other people who are going through something similar,
pay attention to it.
Pay attention to yourself, but also if you are at a place where you're self-aware that you are going through troubles and hardships, like do reach out to people, like do reach out to trusted individuals. I was somebody who kept it very much within myself, well, at least within my close circle of friends. But if you feel like you don't have people that you can trust, definitely, I'm somebody who's open for people to reach out to.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm gonna put your information down below. Like,
yeah, go ahead,
your Instagram,
ahead.
Things like that. Yeah, you seem very positive about this whole thing. Like, you're smiling so much. You're like, hey, I attempted suicide on camera. You know what I mean?
I know, like, I know a lot of people say it's really striking that I'm very open about these kinds of experiences, but I think it's just a part of my personality, in that I recognize I've gone through a lot in my life, and it's really a big goal of mine to make sure that other people don't, or like, I just want to be as open as I can with my story, so people know that these are real issues and real people have gone through real things as well, and that people feel comfortable reaching out to me. I just want them to know that if I am somebody who is this open, speaking about the hardships that I've gone through, then I'm more than happy to be here to talk through whatever you're also going through as well.
Yeah, wow. Well, Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through all that, but that sounds rough. But I appreciate you talking about this.
Yeah, of course.